Welcome to another episode of the Contractor Show. Each week we come to you and we bring a special guest. And we got somebody extra special today, and this is Andy Varnes with Varnes Media. So Andy and I have been working together for quite some time, and we're going to talk about something a little different today that's been really, I'd say, at the heart and tugs at us quite in the most recent times is what I'll say. And Andy, this is a side of business that people don't like talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is the most, or I'd say one of the most expensive part of playing business owner. And so with that being said, I want to start this off by saying, and keep this in mind, the more that you do as a business owner, the more money that you make, the more people will come after you. They will come after you for ridiculous and stupidity type situations that might not even make sense. But people begin to see how much you value time versus how you value money. For example, I value my time a whole lot more than I value money because I can make more money, but I can't gain more time. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up a topic, kind of last night when we were kind of going in discussion that this was not the plan whatsoever, but it just kind of came to fruition, and I think it's something that's it's good to talk about. It's not fun to talk about, but coming from somebody that is pretty young in their business career, I really wish somebody had told me stuff about this.
Yeah, and it's hard to prepare for it. We're both new business owners. I've been doing this for a few years now with several businesses, but I had gotten into a situation, not at fault. It's just strictly this individual seeing how we value time versus money, and wanted to come after us for something this is so comical, something that just was not even true. But during the mediation, we knew that we could pay this individual off with a certain amount of money, and let's move on, let's get over it. And it pisses me off to no end that people don't value other business owners to the point to where they lie through their teeth. And it says a lot about an individual, and I can't go into details on that case, but I was talking to my wife about it last night, and she was pretty fired up about this, on why I paid this individual off. I can't say the value, but I will tell you it was north of $30,000. I had to pay the individual off yesterday, and now I'm angry about it. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I will tell you this, that there's a weight off my shoulders. Once I'm able to get weight off my shoulders, I can now refocus back on the business because, like I said, we can always make more money. Never get our time back.
Absolutely. So how I'm trying to think from somebody in your perspective, is it better, which is a more satisfying feeling of chasing after them, essentially taking them down, either taking them to court, essentially kind of putting them out into the open of kind of letting the world know exactly what happened, and it actually is usually going to cost you more money on the end. So which is a better, how do you choose that feeling of saying, hey, I need to really take action and make a statement and prove a point versus to where what you decided to do was saying, I'm going to essentially almost turn the other cheek and just bite the bullet and just say, hey, we got things to get done and we need to keep on moving.
That's exactly what we did. We turned the other cheek and we kept going because we knew that going to the next level. So if you aren't familiar with the next level of when you get a claim, mediation, and what's next, and it all is driven based on what your contract actually says. In this case here, it was mediation. Next step was arbitration. So you're in a room with a mediator. Both parties are in separate rooms, and that mediator is going from room to room trying to make a resolution, make a deal. Other party wasn't willing to, and we came to the table and said, look, this is what we'll pay. That's it. Not a dime more. Take it or leave it. They took it. But if they didn't, we would have went to arbitration. Arbitration is where it gets extremely expensive. So to answer your question, I would say that it varies on what the dollar amount is that you're trying to go after or they're trying to get from you. Because once you get to arbitration, you have to have a forensic accountant. You have to pay the judge. There's a lot of businesses you got to pay. And going to arbitration, this case here, north of $30,000 that we paid, going to arbitration would have cost me over $100,000. So you've really got to understand the value, or not the value, I would say the liability or the risk that you're trying to prevent from happening. And so if there's any advice, and I'm not an attorney, I haven't been, this is the first case I've ever been into, and there's going to be more to come. It's part of business. People are going to come after you the more success that you have. And so you just got to be in a financially healthy situation to where I just wrote the check and we were done. Don't have to worry about it. We'll make that money back next week easily. So there's not a grading, there's not a scale that you can grade from. You just have to say, look, if mediation is going to cost me X, leading up to that, I've got to pay attorney fees. We probably paid about $7,000-8,000 in attorney fees. So I spent well north of 30 on that case there. But I can tell you, I don't have to worry about it. I'm absolutely done, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay going to bed at night and putting my head down and saying, look, I don't have to worry about that. We're done. I'm not fighting. I'm never the one to get in a situation and point fingers. I will more than likely and more willing to take the higher road, turn the other cheek, and go. But then again, I've never been in a situation where I was really at fault, and I've never really been in a situation where I'm going after anyone either. So, if it was a situation, a few $100,000, I'm definitely pursuing that. But I'm more the individual of let's talk the things through, and ultimately, if you get in that situation, you get into mediation, it's better for parties to kind of talk this thing through, because that's the purpose of mediation, is to come to a resolution and to prevent arbitration from occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the actual pros of taking somebody to arbitration? Or are there really any?
The only pros of taking someone to arbitration is getting closer to a resolution, because there will be a resolution made at arbitration, but you have to be prepared to spend that money. Let's use an example. Let's say there's a $50,000 claim out there. Let's say somebody came to you for $50,000, said, hey, Andy, you owe me $50,000 because X, Y, and Z. You say, no, I don't. This is a lie. I had the backup to support it. You then get your backup, attorneys go back and forth. You're now paying an attorney, right? You're paying him $300-400 an hour plus his team. Then at that point, you are going back and forth. You get assigned to a mediator. You get a mediation scheduled. You still don't come to an agreement. Now that $50,000 is really $60,000. So now you just start gradually going. So what I say is that if you're going to arbitration with a low amount, you better be ready. Because I made a business decision yesterday on the behalf of my business and my people here that I wasn't gonna do that. It's just it didn't make sense. I don't have the time nor the capacity to do it. And at the end of the day, it's a lot of money. I mean, $30,000 is a lot of money, but we're gonna make that back, and I'm not worried about it.
So if you did go to arbitration, would you have tried to essentially almost counter-strike with that?
See, so that's a really good question, because a lot of people would counter-strike, right? And we could have pursued this and really got some money out of it without arbitration, right? So we probably could have broke even with attorney fees. But I think a lot of people go to arbitration getting prepared to strike back. I've never been in one, nor do I ever want to be in one. I'll do anything I can to prevent that, because it is so expensive. And like I said, unless you're in a situation to where, that what I say is that nut makes sense to pursue. But I advise anyone, if you're ready to go into arbitration, just be ready to spend a shit ton of money.
Yeah. So looking back now, we've heard the story. So what are some ways that as your business grows, as you as an individual grows, how can you kind of protect yourself from people, essentially, coming after you?
So, excuse me. So in the construction space, always have your contracts written by a professional, a licensed attorney. Don't get on the internet and Google construction contract, because more times than not, those are not reviewed contracts that have been written by an attorney or a lawyer. a lot of those are individuals sitting at home that are just trying to make a few extra bucks. And if you can get a contract for free, it's not the right contract. There are clauses in there that you need to talk about what happens when there is a dispute. What's the resolution? What happens when I file a claim? Are you going to pay my attorney fees, or am I paying your attorney fees? There's all these claims that you have to put in there, and there's Florida statutes that we have to follow as contractors. So always have your contracts reviewed, if not put together by a true attorney. And that's what we do with all our contracts. Every single contract we have is either a standard AIA document, which is a standard form across the construction industry that are they're great, they're usable, they're easy, we pay for them, and it's a very common contract to see in our line of work. If you don't use that, just go get an attorney. Pay the attorney a few $100, $1,000, whatever it is, and have him put together a contract for that project. You know, in our space, we got contracts for pre-construction, design build, lump sum, cost plus fee. We got 6 or 7 different types of contracts that I have spent, you know, I don't know, let's call it close to $15,000 getting made. Because you don't want to be in that situation. And I would sure as hell rather spend $15,000 than pay another 30.
And are these contracts kind of reusable? Can you use them for multiple?
They are. So they are our contracts that I pay for. I can edit them. And you know what happens when we go to a client and they don't like the comments? There's boilerplates they strike through. I consult back with the attorney. I'll pay the attorney a few $100 an hour for 2 hours to review it, than be in a situation that's going to cost me a few $1,000s. So yeah, always have the attorney review the contracts. Even if there's comments, red lines, I will strictly just send it back and say, hey, can't say his name, but any comments, any concerns with the contract based on the comments. And more times than not, it's fine because they have already, I would say, they have placed us in a position with a contract where we are covered ultimately.
So how often is there, you know, I've kind of dealt with this in the past with different startup that I was in, to where they have a legal team and they are trying to nitpick and they're trying to change these small individual lines to really put it into their favor as much as possible.
Sometimes it's just not the right deal. We have come across contracts in the past with owners to where they want to use their form, which is fine, but my return is going to review it. And if we have comments and they don't want to budge, a good example is liquidated damages. Liquidated damages is a clause in the contract that says, look, if latching construction is not finished by September 1st, every day thereafter, I'm going to charge you X dollars per day. We always try to waive that, but we also want to respect the client and where they are with the position of their client as well. So more times than not, our owner is in contract with another franchise or national development firm or et cetera, and they're just tying us to the same terms they're tied to. So we try to respect it within reason. But if ultimately we cannot come to a resolution, then it's just not the right deal. And we don't want to put ourselves in a situation to where I'm paying $10,000 a day in LDs, and God forbid the project gets delayed 2 weeks. Well, what's 14 times 10, right? It's $140,000. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, adds up quick.
So, you know, sometimes it's just not right to contract. What I tell people is that quit trying to force these contracts to happen and go with your gut. Not every project's the right project. Not every contract's the right contract to go into. I did this when I was young in the business, and I made a lot of mistakes. But I can tell you, being in the position that I am now, I have a sniff test with the contracts and the projects. And we pass on projects now because it's not the right project or the right contract for us.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you can go in too much detail with everything that kind of went down. What was the big mistake that kind of turned everything upside down with this situation?
It wasn't the contract. I think ultimately what had happened here was that there was some work that was never authorized, and by that party they didn't follow the contract terms as far as the approval process and sign change orders, and ultimately tried to come back 6 months after the job was complete. So there's nothing else that we could have done differently. You know, we we notify any trades and any contractors that if you're proceeding with work that is not authorized, you are proceeding at risk. Because if I have a mason contractor or a framing contractor proceeding with additional framing that he knows is out of scope, but we are never notified of that, how am I supposed to go back to the client to say, look, we have an unforeseen situation, and let's use some contingency for this. Let's sit down and talk about it. And ultimately, what we see is that if we sit down and talk to a client about a situation, we always come to a resolution, always. And so I never understood why that firm never came to us to talk that through. And I think, maybe there was an assumption at the end of the job that we would just stroke checks and pay bills, but that's not the case. I'm not a banker.
So essentially what, I don't know, I'm trying to think of that in that situation as that business owner, you're thinking, honestly, this kind of gives us another opportunity to add more to the bill and get more work done.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that think that way. There's a lot of people that think just because we're doing the volume that we are and the rate that we're going, that they can always try to get a bit more in there. And I think that was one of these cases. And ultimately, when we just started to find errors and billing and duplicates, we called their bluff about it. We said, there's too many errors here. And that's when we started to call things out, that's when it started to go south a little bit. So again, we were probably entitled to some money there, but the amount of time we'd have had to have put into pursuing that or even breaking even, we would have spent that on attorney fees, and this thing could have been drug out another year. And to me, the value or the cost or the check that we wrote was well worth it.
How long has this been going? When was the first time that you've heard about it versus now to where there's a resolution?
So, we seen the red flags after, I'd say probably a couple months before the project was done. This project was about a year long.
This is going on. When was the project kind of finished? Like, how long have you been having to deal with this?
So about a year.
Yeah, I mean, that's
about a year. So, it's been eating at me for about a year now, knowing that day was going to come, that, this person was just going to kind of be stuck in their ways and really didn't want to work things out. What I always tell people, what we try to do here is that we tried meeting after meeting to bring that company into the office and let's talk to a resolution. Let's be open book. So one thing I do with my clients and tradesmen is that I am completely open book. I'll pull up our accounting system for all I care and show you our profit and fees. And that's what we did here. But there was still under some assumption that we had a back end deal with our client, and we were pushing profits into another job, which is absolutely asinine. But that was the assumption that was made, because we don't do any work with this client. It was a one project. So, we were open book about it. We seen it coming, and so we were prepared for it. We just didn't want to fight it.
Yeah.
Again, we value our time a whole lot more than I value a dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this isn't a subject that's fun to talk about, but
this is a subject that people don't like to talk about, and a subject that people won't talk about. Because if I would have known I was going to deal with all this stuff before I started my business, I just even pound sand. I'm not interested. But ultimately, I was told this at a young age. You have to pay to play, and this is the price of business sometimes. You just got to do it.